Hi, everybody. It is Dr. Laura with Connect My Brain. Thanks so much for tuning in to this podcast. I have titled this one Hopeful versus Hopeless. And I want to bring a message today about something I'm really noticing in our children. I also notice it in adults. And I think because I've noticed this in adults over the many years of practice, it is so apparent to me that this is actually starting in childhood, and we need to be aware of it so that we can change it for the child. And that's the really interesting part about working with kids. They're so malleable. And I love watching them because they're just so intuitive. They're so innate and purposeful, and they really are very malleable with what direction you want to take them. And here at Connect My Brain, we really like teaching everyone, children and adults, that when you come here, this is your time for practice. You're coming here to accomplish something. So we've got to be 100% focused on whatever that practice is for that individual, and be very aware of their movements, be very intentional, helping them correct and show them where they need to make a change, why they need to make that change, and then watch them accomplish it. So if we were just talking about trying to have better form in exercise, we're going to be pointing out where's hand placement, where is leg placement, breathing. When in that exercise, when do you take your deep breath in? And that is played throughout every floor. This is a house where the practice is. It's a tri-level house, and so there's 3 floors, and on every floor the same message resonates for that individual everywhere they go in the house, because it is through practice, it is through repetition that we are then able to make a change. So, one of the things that I've noticed, and I'll start off with the adults, adults have a tendency to be so hard on themselves, so critical on themselves. Whatever images they've created in their mind, and constantly comparing themselves to some norm that they've deemed is my perfect model. And if I come up a little less of that, then I'm very critical of myself. This is also a practiced pattern. And so you really do have a choice. That's another word that I use so often in the office and with patients, is that you have a choice. And that's not to create any kind of frustration or aggravation. You really do have a choice. What do you choose to do? What do you choose to think? What makes it hard is that you've practiced for so long these patterns of thought, these patterns of criticism, these patterns of comparison. So, in order to change it, it seems like a real uphill battle. And never to take away from an individual. Some individuals have some very difficult roads to handle. And especially with a physical modality or some kind of physical limitation, you're not necessarily going to be able to step out of that, but you have to try to harness a thought that can at least begin to flourish the mind and the body with an energy of transformation. And I know that is not easy. And the part I really like to try to add to someone's journey is this idea of frequency and repetition, because that is how the brain works. And that's my little nugget over here, is that if you can first become aware that that thought pattern exists and that it's overwhelming your mind, and it's overwhelming your mind's eye of how you look at everything. And if you aren't able to see that, that's going to be the number one roadblock. You have to be able to see what your obstacles are. And I have mine too. And I pray diligently in the spirit to help my mind and body to be infused with healing potential. So it isn't easy. It is an everyday process until there's been enough repetitions to start going in another direction. And for myself, that's where my quiet time in God's word is so powerful for me, because I go into my space, my time, and I ask for that revelation. I ask for that clarity. And every single time I get it, but now I've got this new piece of information. What am I going to do with it? I have to practice when those thoughts come in that are keeping me from my best, that are keeping me from being all that I am meant to be. I have to replace it immediately. I have to catch myself and I have to replace it immediately. And one of the strategies that I practice, especially with my adults, is you have to speak it out loud. If I were to do a brain map on you and you had any of these obstacles going on that I'm referring to, we would definitely see some frequencies out of range in the brain. So whatever it is that we're practicing, there's an exchange going on that can go either way or both ways, meaning top down and let's just say from the mind up. And then it can go both ways, especially dependent upon your past and how your subconscious came together, which was when you were a child. And we will get to the pediatric population in just a few minutes. So either the wiring is coming from years of practice, somebody else saying something to you, you taking that perspective with you decade after decade after decade. And now you know that there's something that you want to desperately change. How do I do it? And even the words, I don't know how to do it, they come out of people's mouths all the time. And that's the first thing you have to stop. And personally, I tell you to get a big red stop sign and hold it up to yourself. Because if I did a brain map on you and I found any of those brain waves out of range, too little, too much, if you try to do it only in your mind, only in your thought life, those will be the brain waves, either too much or too little, that are going to shape the thought. So let's just say, for example, an individual had too much high beta, and high beta is a very, very fast wave. Now, some people can function in that fast wave. They've literally trained themselves to be at a very high level and to be able to manage fast waves. But most of us do not resonate in fast waves. In fact, that is typically associated with anxiety. Now, keep that in mind, especially when we get to the pediatric population. But let's just say, for simplicity, that that is what I found. Okay. So if I just try to do it in my head, okay, try not to think about that obstacle. Let's replace it with this. Let's try this way. If I'm only doing that in my thought life, the feedback is going to be mixed with that fast wave, and it's going to come down, and the action is going to have a very hard time being fulfilled. Does that make sense? So if I use my special senses, like my voice and my ears, and I speak to myself, I would even go in front of a mirror. I'd hold up that stop sign. I'd bring together as many things as I possibly could to literally stop, even for a moment. Look at yourself and say, this just isn't what I want to say over myself. What can I say over myself right now? I choose in this moment to think differently, and I'm going to hold on to that. Now, I'm going to tell you, it's going to come roaring back in. But maybe day one in doing this, maybe you got to do something like this 200 times, going in front of yourself and say, enough is enough. Let's stop. Choose to do this. But maybe tomorrow and the next day, you'll keep dropping down the number of times that you actually have to say it. It is that repetition. It is that frequency that makes a difference on your brain. You know, I myself have gone through neurofeedback and absolutely love it. Neurofeedback, if you've never heard that term, is a tool, a therapy that you can use to enhance the practice of self-regulation. And you have your brain map, and then you're sitting in front of a screen and you're engaging in something pleasant to watch, and your conscious mind is actually entertained while we have leads or caps on your head, and a program is utilized based on your brain map. What is it that we want to try to bring those frequencies back into the expected range? You get the feedback from the system through auditory and visual. There's a filter put over the screen, and every time your brain is in the right place, the picture is bright. And there's also a sound. Might be a bird, might be a little beep, but your subconscious mind is picking up on the visual cue and the auditory cue, and it's syncing. Every time the picture is bright, I hear the sound. Every time I hear the sound, the picture is bright. And then literally at the end of the session, we can see what your performance was like. So there are these feedback mechanisms, and it's because of how the neurology, the brain and the body in concert with one another, how they work in feedback in order to make change, whether it's the right change or a negative change. Whatever it is that you practice is literally setting up this communication. And sometimes, especially with adults, these are things that have been going on for years, but it's like it reached maximal capacity. And now they want to do something about it. And when I ask, when's the first time that you ever noticed you were anxious, you were depressed, you were having trouble sleeping, you didn't have motivation, you were having trouble with cognitive flexibility, whatever the situation is, it usually goes back a very long time. And this is one of the things, just even in very early practice, when all I did was chiropractic care for the community, the adult patient always needed so much more than the child when it came to just looking at their structure and the communication of their structure to their whole nervous system, their brain, their nerves, and their body, their spinal cord, how it all was moving together. And adults, I was always telling them you had to have this diet and this exercise, and maybe even think about a new job and all these kinds of things, where the child was so malleable right in front of me. Isn't it interesting too, in scripture, it talks about being childlike. To gain that cognitive flexibility back into the adult brain and body, we do need to become more childlike. But I don't think it's super easy just to think that way. In fact, as I switch over to the pediatric patient child, the reason I wanted to set this up so that the adult could resonate with what it feels like in this grown-up version. I think a lot of things that we've carried with us have absolutely been set up in early childhood. One of the things that I've noticed, I'll be doing an assessment with a child, and they're always asking me, did I do good? Did I do good? Did I get it right? That pattern of judgment. Have I done it correctly? Did I do good? It's being laid down in early childhood. I find myself always saying to these children that this isn't about doing it right or doing it good. I'm just figuring out how you do it. And when they come, they're already so geared towards looking at themselves from that lens. And when I get a child that's under the age of 7, we can turn things around pretty quickly, because that subconscious mind is still forming. It's still coming together. It's still very malleable. But there's a huge shift between 7.5 and 8.5, where those patterns have been so laid down. It's not as easy. And it also coincides, if you look at the grade level, they're really looking at a child preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. But by the time the child gets to the third grade, if they're not performing as expected, they are shaping that child to be more adaptive to a different model. And I spoke about a term in a previous podcast about spectrum diversity, like accepting all these developmental issues rather than truly working on them. And I would really encourage, please share this message. Don't give up on your child. Don't move into a state of adaptation along with the rest of the world. Children will change if you give them what they need. If you find out what they need. I hear from children that they don't enjoy school. And they've got so much of their life ahead of them. And it really isn't just the academic years. It's life in general. I'm a life learner. I don't ever want to not learn. Could you imagine having that laid down so early in your life? And what might that do to the shaping of the mind of a child? Don't settle for adaptation. There are 5 categories in looking at children, and it is gross motor, fine motor, social communication, and adaptation. Every single one of those categories have sequences of events that go on that are responsible for wiring up each and every individual, including adults. I mean, you've already gone through it, but the child is still going through it. And this one category, adaptation, is so important to understand what it really means, because the child will continue to grow up. The child will continue to get taller and bigger, but it doesn't mean that all wiring, just because they get taller and bigger, it does not mean that all the wiring came together as it was expected. And it is through a developmental assessment that you can identify what the issues are. And if you give the nervous system the information, hey, I want to break the pattern of adaptation. If that child is clumsy, I want to break the pattern of the body not being able to move as it's expected to. If there's primitive reflexes still firing, holding that child in their brainstem, we can break the pattern by integrating the reflex. If a child is not coordinated, we can practice coordination and then teach the brain and body how to put that together. If the chemistry is off and I don't have the fuel I need, most of the time, I'd say 99% of the time with these kiddos, they've got sick bellies. And it doesn't mean that you get to see it all on the outside. What you may see, lots of different things. Picky eater, ravenous eater, little puffy lower bellies, very skinny and eats a lot but doesn't gain weight, irritated, moody, can't sleep. All of these things are indicators I'm not okay inside. And 99%, 100% of the time, you see it on the lab tests. And that's why I look at labs, because I want to know. I want to know what the issue is. Because if you know what it is, you fix it. You break the pattern. You promote healing. These bodies are marvelous. This is why we have this category of adaptation. You will go on, but it does not mean you will thrive. And it does not mean that it will not come at a cost, because it does. And for kiddos, it's, I don't want to ride a bike. I'm too scared. I can't concentrate. I'm going to sneak food. I'm not going to do my homework. I'm not going to do anything you tell me to do, because honestly, my brain just will not allow me, or I'm going to fight you because I am so irritated inside. This has to be the picture on the outside to get someone's attention, just like I did when I was a baby and I cried. The other day, I had an adorable little girl just starting neurofeedback. And she was asking great questions. What is this doing to my brain? And this was her first day. That is an open door. I want to engage with what you're doing. So I absolutely took the time. I carpe diem, I seized the moment. And I went and I talked to her. And I told her what we are doing. Remember when I took your brain map? Well, I found some things with the brain waves that are actually making it very difficult for you to really do well in school. And we're going to fix it. So whenever you see the picture go bright, you see how the picture is going bright and dark? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Great. Do you hear the little sound? Yes, 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 I do. Now I want you to notice that when the picture is bright, the sound is there. Your brain is figuring out how to practice in order to see the picture. Oh, wow. And then I gave her a few moments. One of the programs will actually give you what we're going to refer to as points. And these points reflect how many times that individual's brain was in the correct place. So I went back to my office maybe for 3 or 4 minutes only. And then I was heading back downstairs and I went by her station and she was already over 300 points. And I said, guess what? You've already done this over 300 times. She looked at me with amazement and said, I did? And I said, yes. That was hope. That was hope where hope had been crushed. And I was excited. I was excited for her. There were so many things that went on in that moment. When emotion is tied to something, firing together and wiring together, you get your brain's attention. You break that loop that's been going on between the amygdala laying down a pattern of, once again, I did it wrong, to sending that same message to the frontal lobe and beating the person down. You have changed it in that moment. And in that moment, that is real time. And that is when you change the brain. That is how powerful neurofeedback is. That is how powerful any feedback is. When we give that feedback, hey, you're doing a great job. That's feedback. When you're beating somebody down going, no, you didn't get it right again, you're laying down those patterns. So in that moment, there was a shift for her. And she had a new message resonating in her brain. And she ended up that day with over 900. And these little sessions for the kiddos is about 20 minutes. And they get a sticker and it's reinforced and it lets them know. And they put the sticker on their notebook and they get to carry their notebook in and they're champions. And that is what we are creating here at Connect My Brain. We are showing them that they are powerful in their own mind. They just need to relearn That's all they need to do. And as long as we can keep them open, and we have many strategies right from the minute that they walk in the door, that we are going to have a fresh palette to work with, because we want to bring them along. We want to help them accomplish all of the goals that we have set for them on time. And we want this place, Connect My Brain, to be the last place that any child and family has to come to for once and for all, to resolve all these issues that are being labeled on children, rather it be autism, Asperger, OCD, attention problems, whatever the case may be. Now, here's another scenario to show you what can happen with just starting out with neurofeedback. We might have kiddos that are very sensitive to ear clips, and watching them in 3 or 4 sessions being desensitized to something being put on their ears. That is breaking a pattern of adaptation, that my withdrawal reflex that's standing up on edge all the time, and I am so irritated that you can't even put a clip on my ear. You're already breaking the pattern when you see that. The funny thing is, the same one, as soon as I put the filter in front of their show, hey, why'd you do that? Why'd you make it dark? Make it bright again. Perfect opportunity, open door opportunity for me to go, oh, wait a minute. That's not me. That's you. Your brain can make the picture bright. Why don't you try to figure that out? And within seconds, as soon as I start to see, what was that? You've got the brain's attention. It's opening their eyes to the possibility that they can do something right then and there and get positive feedback for their own brain, that by golly, they can do it. We have to instill that back into these children. We have to give them hope, where in their own little hearts, hope has been lost because they haven't had it easy to learn. And instead of figuring it out, it's just a bunch of adaptive strategies, a bunch of remediation, a bunch of tutoring. And no offense to any of that stuff. I hope you know me by now. It's no offense, but I can't help it. This is what I do. I look at the development. I find the patterns that have been blocking these children from moving forward. I educate the parents. I tell the parents, this is a snapshot in time. You have to make our sessions together, our time together, top priority, because we try to do this with intensity and frequency, because that's how the brain works. And we are teaching lifestyle changes. We can be that last stop. If you had something else come up in your life, you're going to have an entire notebook of resources of how to get something back on track if life were to give you another curveball. And sometimes it does. But the beauty of this work is the brain will remember. Oftentimes people will ask, do I have to come in for a booster? Well, it's not official, but sometimes people want to. And the cool part is that the brain knows how to get right back. Hey, I remember what you did. Okay, we wired together, we fired together. Let's just go back. And they do it. I had a little boy who had a very rough emotional situation, and it was suffering a loss. And that loss has a very high impact on any kind of situation. And he popped back in for about 6 weeks. And when he started saying to me, do I have to do this anymore? No, you don't, because I knew that he had stepped back into himself. And that's what this work is. It's the art of self-regulation. You are innately designed to know how to do that. Don't give up on your child. Don't settle for a label. Even with autism, there is so much work out there that shows that children that had some kind of regression, typically this is associated with brain inflammation. Get to the root cause. You're talking about their lifetime. And there is so many things that you can do for this marvelous system. This is a great time to find Connect My Brain. We do work with adults. We do, I would say 10% is adults, 90% is kids. We love all of you. People find us for neurofeedback, functional nutrition, and then, of course, our children's program. Summer is a great time to invest in your child and get them ready for the next school year. Pull them together. We are so excited. We've got a great group of kids and we only have a few spots left to help children this summer because we don't allow this place to get overwhelmed. We want to work one-on-one with you or your child. But this is a great opportunity to take the time to get them ready to go back and just dazzle that school system. Wow, what did you do this summer? And start that child off on a new path. Hey, if you want more information, go to the website and fill out a form. Let me know when you're available and we can connect. I am happy to get on the phone and talk to you about your personal situation. You can always call the office 678-501-5172. If we don't answer, we're just with patients, but I assure you we will call you back. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you got some great pearls. Share it with someone and let's change the world. Be blessed.